I'm Christopher Oscarson, Associate Professor of Humanities here at BYU, and I'm here to share with you a few thoughts about today's film. Ingmar Bergman's Seventh Seal is perhaps one of the best known of the European films introduced into America's budding art house cinema circuit in the 1950s. It was first released in 1957 and quickly became one of the great examples of post-war European cinema that shunned traditional narrative forms and styles to explore philosophical positions and the state of the human condition. The film is set in plague-ridden Sweden during the 14th century, but the post-apocalyptic landscape it presents eerily seems to suggest the possible future for the atomic age, an arms race which, in 1957, was barely a decade old. As such, the film is often read as an existential allegory, where the characters are not developed in the traditional sense, but seem more like masks, or like characters that might be encountered in a medieval morality play. Antonius Block, the film's existential hero, is met by death in the opening scene, but is promised a respite for as long as he is able to withstand death in perhaps cinema's most famous game of chess. Bergman claims that this representation of death, with his white painted face and long black robe, was inspired by paintings he once saw on a medieval church wall in provincial Sweden. Through this film, this representation of death has become a regular part of the cinematic repertoire, reappearing in numerous films, such as Woody Allen's Love and Death, and translated, of course, into the battleship and twister games with death in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. The movie itself is based on a play written by Bergman called A Painting on Wood, and you will notice a tension that is developed in the film between words and images. The Seventh Seal is, in essence, a road movie. Antonius Block and his squire Jöns are on a journey back to Sweden after the Crusades, but really Antonius is on a quest for a sure knowledge about the existence of God. In this scene, Antonius stops in a church to pray. You might notice the medieval paintings covering the walls, the types of paintings which might have inspired some of the images in the movie.
Och tomheten är en spegel vänd mot mitt eget ansikte. Jag ser mig själv. Grips av vedervilja och skräck. Genom min likgiltighet för människorna har jag ställts utanför deras gemenskap. Numera lever jag i en spökvärld, innesluten i mina drömmar och fantasier.
Och trots det vill du inte dö?
Jo, jag vill.
Vad väntar du på?
Jag vill ha vetskap.
Du vill ha garanti.
Kalla det vad du vill.
Notice both Bergman's use of light and the mise-en-scène. Here you have this grill and the light that's coming through the grill, which stands in for Antonius's inability to reach out and touch the divine. He feels like he's a prisoner in this earthly existence and is looking for this surety and this answer, but in the face of what he sees as just being silence. Many were impressed with Bergman's willingness to exhibit his own fears and his on the screen in this way, and this is one of the greatest examples of auteur cinema. Accompanying Antonius Block on his journey is his squire, Jöns. And Jöns is a stark contrast with Antonius. Antonius, who's seeking for something outside of this earthly life. Jöns is more focused on the here and the now and is skeptical that anyone could ever attain anything outside of this earthly existence. Faced with the silence of God, Antonius is forced to turn elsewhere to come to grips with existence and to find something meaningful in life. This scene, in which Antonius and his squire share an idyllic moment with Jopf and Mia, itinerant performers, is one of the only times in the film in which Antonius seems to have found a moment of rest. It should be noted, of course, that Jopf and Mia are performers, entertainers, that, perhaps for Bergman, are the medieval version of the filmmaker. For Bergman, Sällskap, or the company of others, is an important compensation for God's silence. Mia and Jopf's goodness and generosity are embodied in the wild strawberries they offer to Antonius, and is perhaps a reference to Bergman's other 1957 film entitled Wild Strawberries, which has a similar message about the importance of meaningful human contact. You might also notice in this scene, as in other scenes in the film, the emphasis of this Nordic light, this unique light that you find in the northern countries that's more vertical than horizontal. And you might think about how this is a stand-in for this type of contact between human beings.
Skål med smultron. Skål med mjölk. Era ansikten i kvällsljuset. Mikael som ligger och sover. Joff med sitt strängaspel. Jag ska försöka komma ihåg vad vi talat om. Och jag ska bära det här minnet mellan mina händer. Lika försiktigt som vore det en skål breddfylld med nymjölkad mjölk.
The final scene is the Dance of Death. Bergman claims that it was an impromptu decision made when he saw the lighting coming up over the hill, but it's become one of the most famous images of the film and the most famous of all movie history. I hope you enjoy the film.